Shabbat Shalom. The classic joke goes that a new Jewish Supreme Court justice has just been sworn in, and the Supreme Court justice, his family, and all of the bigwigs of Washington are gathered at one of those reception dealings, the big parties that happen after such a thing. And there have been now a number of Jewish Supreme Court justices, so maybe not just only one. And there at the party, everybody is rubbing elbows and giving, of course, praise to this new member to the court as being one of the shining luminaries of the legal profession, of having reached the pinnacle of judicial career, and he is beaming with pride. And as he is walking around and shaking hands, he overhears his mother, who is talking to some of the other guests, and his mother says, "Yes, I'm his mother, but let me tell you about his brother, the doctor." Sorry, maybe that's too old of a Jewish joke and you no longer get the joke. The long joke used to be that there were three professions that a Jewish mother wanted for her children in order: doctor, lawyer, accountant. Somewhere near the bottom was rabbi. But doctor, lawyer, accountant, those were the only three prestigious, and they were very much a hierarchy. If you were a lawyer and your brother was a doctor, well then, let's be honest, your mother was going to brag about him a lot more than you, even if you had a good government job like being a Supreme Court justice. This kind of favoritism is not new. It's not just a joke because of modern American Jewish culture and the immigrant strive to move from immigrant to the professional classes. This is seen in Torah. We are here in Vayishlach, in the Torah portion of the week, and we see Jacob still wrestling with his brother, along with some other unnamed entity, and still wrestling really with where does he stand in relationship to him. You'll remember that the only reason why he is now encountering his brother after 20-some years is because he fled from his brother 20 years ago, because he had cheated his brother out of the blessing of their father, and he had finagled the birthright out of his brother as well. And the only reason that had happened, of course, was because one parent liked him and the other parent liked his brother. Rivka liked Yaakov and Yitzchak liked Esau. The favoritism pattern really created a tension between the two brothers, even while they were yet in the womb. But is favoritism really that endemic? I mean, surely this is the only example of favoritism that we find in Torah and Tanakh, right? Any other Bible buffs here have other examples of favoritism, of jealousy between siblings? Joseph! What happens once Jacob is finally settled down and has at least made peace, kind of a truce with his brother? He begins to shower praise and praise and praise upon his son Joseph, who earns the animosity of his brothers, who take and sell him off into slavery. But it didn't begin with the coat of many colors, famous though it is. It actually began very deliberately, very clearly in this week's Torah portion. Because as Jacob is approaching his brother Esau, accompanied by 400 of his fiercest friends, Jacob doesn't know what Esau is intending. Certainly looks like violence, and so he prepares for violence. But how do you prepare for violence when you have this family of so many children, when you have all of these flocks and other possessions with you? Well, you do like any good army would do from the ancient world all the way up until the creation of modern professional armies. You stagger your forces, and you try to put a few sweeteners from the baggage train in the way, so that as they come to attack and you have to retreat, hopefully they'll stay with whatever loot they have gotten and not continue to pursue you. Right? You throw down your wallet and the mugger won't chase you. That's been a strategy since the year 10,000 BCE. But how do you stagger your loot in this case if you're Jacob? Very simply, you're at front because, of course, you have to talk to your brother first, but behind you, you order your family in waves. That way, if Esau attacks, he'll, yes, probably capture or kill you, and then he will probably capture or kill the first group, but having captured or killed them, he'll then be happy to loot, enslave, and the others can flee, and he'll be satiated, and the other portions of your family can escape. Do I have any volunteers to be the first line to fall as the sacrificial lamb to stop the horde? Don't worry, Jacob doesn't need volunteers. He'll just pick his least loved wives, Bilhah and Zilpah, the two handmaidens, and the children born to them, and stick them in that first cadre. Then, right behind them, well, with a little bit of a buffer, he'll put Leah and all of her kids. And then at the very back, with the best chance of running survival, the best chance to get away, he'll put his beloved Rachel and his real firstborn of his heart, Joseph, even though Joseph was far from the first actually born to him. Everybody knew where they stood. This was a family that just wore it on the sleeves. There was a hierarchy of who Dad loved best, and in fact, you were expected to die so that the people he liked better would be able to live. Can we see why this might grow a little toxic relationship within the family once they settle down? I mean, fine, it's good. Esau didn't kill us all, but can you imagine living with the trauma, knowing that your father expected you and your mothers to be attacked and possibly killed, or at the very least taken into captivity, just so your brother and the good wife would be able to get away? It's not going to breed harmony. And indeed it doesn't. That's what we're going to be reading about for the next few weeks. The repercussions of that, the almost complete dissolution of the Jewish people before we even began, because of precisely this. But luckily, in a few weeks, we will also read about the eventual reconciliation, not just of Joseph and his brothers, although beautiful as it is, but the reconciliation of favoritism altogether. Because eventually Jacob is going to come down to Egypt, and he is going to meet Joseph, and he's going to meet Joseph's family. And he's going to meet Ephraim and Manasseh, the two children born to Jacob there in the land of Egypt. These are Joseph. These are Jacob's unknown grandchildren. And when he meets them, he will want to bless them. And of course, Joseph, having learned the lesson of what happens when you play favorites, arranges them so that they can be blessed in the order of firstborn and secondborn. Joseph understands that how his father treated him, how his parents treated Jacob, was not a good pattern for a healthy family. And so he expects to go along with the norm. The firstborn will get a slightly bigger blessing, and the younger one will receive a slightly smaller blessing. Perfectly fine, in keeping with the culture. And what does Jacob do? He switches his hands to put the greater blessing on the younger and the lesser blessing on the older. Joseph tries to swap him, and he says, look, it's not about my choice. This is a prophecy. And indeed, Ephraim and Manasseh are both going to be successful people. They will become incredibly powerful tribes. But Ephraim will be the more prominent of the two. And so I'm not choosing to give them a different blessing. I am simply acknowledging the destiny that is in store for the two different progenitors of these tribes. It is prophecy, not choice. I'm not playing favorites. I'm just reading the history that is unfolding before me in a prophetic view. Now that's not the important part. The important part is Ephraim and Manasseh's reaction. There is none. They don't argue. They don't fight. They don't take out knives and start sharpening it. They don't accuse each other of stealing the blessing. They continue to live, even once they become tribes, as neighbors and as friends and colleagues. There is no sign that they ever had a falling out over the relative imbalance of their good fortunes going forward. And indeed, this is why when we bless our sons, when we put our hands upon their head, we say, may you be like Ephraim and Manasseh. Not just because they were successful and good and all of that, but because they understood that the material successes that they had were unimportant. Lawyer, doctor, accountant, whatever you are, there is no better or worse. There is no hierarchy within a family. We are family. We are brothers. And to finally realize that, after all of the chapters of Genesis, indeed going all the way back to Cain and Abel, that brothers should treat each other like brothers, regardless of the relative successes that each have. This is a turning point for our people, and there is no greater blessing that we can give to our children. Treat family as family. Enjoy, rejoice in each other's successes. Celebrate the fact that each one can achieve whatever it is they have. It is not a competition. No one is keeping score. And what is good for you is good for me. When we reach that, then we truly move past that episode of Genesis. We move past all of the favoritism, all of the jealousy, and all of the bitterness. And then we become one nation. And then we will be fit for receiving Torah. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat shalom.